G'day guys and gal. Today's topic might seem a bit mundane, like your own life is boring enough as it is, but considering over 100 million people have played Farming Simulator, I could talk about the shape of the shit I took this morning and it could be considered acceptable content. The big reason why this topic is actually going to be a lot of fun today is due to the fact that I find myself potentially disagreeing about Warhammer 40k lore with a writer from Black Library. Not really the place one wants to find themselves. It would be like disagreeing with a cannibal about the taste of human flesh. I found myself potentially disagreeing with Aram Densky Bowden. Before we get started, I love magic, and I love spooning. So it's basically destiny that Magic Spoon and I would team up for this video. If you want to lose fat and pack on muscle in the process, you gotta be eating enough protein without giving yourself diabetes. A lot of cereals, despite the convenience of, just throwing in a bowl and putting in milk and voila, MasterChef, are actually really bad for you. Magic Spoon cuts through all this cholesterol by providing various different flavors of cereal that taste exactly like the delicious ones when you were a kid, but without all that cheeky childhood obesity. Fruity is like Fruit Loops, cacao is like Cocoa Pops, there's even unique flavors that are exclusive to Magic Spoon. The macronutrition on these is insane. 14 grams of protein, 0 grams of sugar, and only 4 net carbs. Not to mention only 140 calories, which is really light, but the protein content helps you feel full despite that. This is a product that I genuinely use. As some of you guys know, I'm currently working on achieving my all-time best physique, and Magic Spoon is genuinely part of the things I'm using to get me there. So if you want to jump in on the convenient, healthy fun, then use my linking code Majorkill for $5 off any order. Magic Spoon backs their product so hard that for whatever reason, if you don't like it, 100% money back guarantee, no questions asked. Cheers to Magic Spoon for sponsoring this video. Today we'll start off by going through my potential disagreement, and I say potential here deliberately because there's a solid chance we're on the exact same page, but we just communicated our arguments from different contexts. Then after that, I will go through what life is like for an Imperial citizen on each of the main Imperial world types. Let's get into it. A little while ago, I made a video where I dispelled various misconceptions in the Warhammer lore, ranging from the Elder not actually being a dying race, all the way to why the Necrons aren't actually that powerful. One of the myths that I dispelled was that the average Imperial citizen wasn't this mega oppressed, depressed person that had to work 20 hours a day, and had the average lifespan of a 40-year-old. I said that as only a small portion of Imperial planets are hive worlds, with the rest mostly being civilized worlds that are very comparable to our current modern day Earth, the average Imperial citizen would have a life comparable to that of us. Some people disagreed, but that tends to happen when you discuss 40 years of lore that has been retconned countless times and built up by a team of dozens of people. Either way, I moved on with my life. But then something caught my attention. An old link directing me to Aram Densky Bowden's Twitter, where he talked about 1D4chan and used a reference from it about the life of Imperial citizens to basically shit on it. Now personally, I learnt a long time ago not to use 1D4chan as a reliable source of information. I relied pretty heavily on it back in the day when I was first starting, and as a result of that, some of my old videos are just, a bit fucking wrong, eh? But it's not all bad and can be a really digestible way to consume Warhammer lore, but yeah, just not the trustiest source. In the screenshot ABD took, 1D4chan's point actually kinda sounded like mine, except theirs was a little too joyful. Like it said shit like the Imperium genuinely cares about its people and that for the vast majority of humans life is pretty great. I merely said that shit isn't as dark for everyone as people make it out to be. ADB completely shat on that 1D4chan snippet. Man had no mercy. So the disagreement might be that ADB thinks the Imperium is wildly grimdark and that the vast majority of its people live in the shitter, whilst I think that most of the Imperium lives generally average and acceptable lives, not too dissimilar from our own. I could be dead wrong about the disagreement and he was merely triggered by how over the top the 1D4chan was with its standard of Imperial living, but that's where the disagreement may lie. So who's right? Well, I've grown out of my 1D4chan reading days and have consumed many Warhammer 40k novels since then, many of which go into detail regarding the lives of average Imperial citizens, which is why I was so confident about including it in my Warhammer 40k Myths video. So I'm going to reference those books, mostly the Eisenhorn ones, which are considered the creme de la creme of Warhammer books, as I go through the average life of an Imperial citizen on each Imperial world type. The first world type I'll cover, which is the most common world type in the Imperium, is a civilized world. This type of world covers a broad spectrum, but the gist of it is that it's not loaded with hives, has a decent but not over the top population, and pays its taxes to the Imperium. Our current Earth would be considered a prime example of a civilized world. And like our world, there would be people who work 30 to 40 hours a week, go fishing on the weekends, play video games, and jerk off to Saint Celestine hentai. There would also be people who are born into poor indebted families, human trafficked, and treated like dog shit. The standout differences would be that religious homage to the God Emperor would be mandatory in most worlds, especially the more developed ones, and shit like climate change, free healthcare, and human rights would take a bit of a back seat. Actually, that pretty much just describes our planet anyway. The world would overall be very peaceful. All nations are united under one government, which is controlled by one planetary governor. The Adeptus Arbites have extreme powers to enforce the law, and any non-chaos or Genestealer uprising would get crushed pretty easily by the Planetary Defense Force. Examples of civilized worlds include the main world from the Infinite and Divine novel, when the humans colonized it. It was very tropical, with the Imperium actually preserving a lot of its natural beauty. There are cafes as well as musical and acting performances. Whilst it probably does sit on the nicer end of civilized worlds, it definitely wasn't a pleasure world, so it still counts. On the other end of the spectrum, the first world we're on in the first Eisenhorn book is a cold, shitty civilized world where most of the population hibernates till the bitter winter ends. Only a small percentage of the population stays awake in a sheltered biodome. And the biodome actually sounds not that bad. It's got suburbs and hookers. Like, beyond that, what else do you need? That ice world would be considered a pretty fucking terrible civilized world to live on, yet there is no hectic regime forcing constant labor and pain. 99% of the population gets to sleep for most of the year. Not bad if you ask me. What about hive worlds? Hive worlds get a bad rap and are always referred to as the cesspits where chaos cults, genestealer cults, and furries run rampant. Do they deserve this reputation? Well, yeah, but to just say that a hive world is a living hell and move on is the logic of a mongoloid. No one wants to be a mongoloid. The reason why hive worlds get these bad raps is because any good hive world story will focus on its darker aspects, and if a hive world's food supply is cut off, then yeah, sure, people will get a bit cranky. Like a civilized world, life in a hive world varies greatly. Each hive city has distinct social classes that are located in different levels of the cities. Generally, the higher up you are, the better off you are. In saying that though, there are some hive cities where the rich live in secret underground areas if the climate and the pollution of the world has made high altitude shitty. Life in the slums of a hive city is pretty shit, but it's still a life. The crime rate is high and gangs roam the street, but it wouldn't be a dramatic difference to, let's say, the poor slums of India or densely packed areas of Mexico City. The lawlessness of the poor areas of a hive city means that people don't have to be working their asses 24/7. If the Arbites can't prevent you from stabbing your neighbor to death with a toothbrush, how the fuck are they going to prevent you from taking an extra long smoko? As I said earlier, every hive is different. Necromunda is an infamous hive city known for its extreme levels of crime and the sheer power of its gangs. But that's because it's a hectic weapons manufacturing planet, so getting high tier guns is really easy. In the Eisenhorn novels, Thracian Primaris is a hive world that gets visited pretty regularly, and while it is packed, it's never described as this decrepit hellhole full of criminals and cannibals. Like, sure, there was a hectic terrorist attack and like 3 million people died, but the hive city was pulled back into order within a week of the huge attack. If hive cities were really as fucked up as people thought, it wouldn't have been that easy. The reason for a hive world's existence is to have large stores of humans that can be rapidly recruited into the Imperial Guard or shipped off to newly colonized Imperial worlds. So living on a hive world might result in you one day being shipped to a beautiful new unpopulated planet to call home. Not bad. Between hive worlds and civilized worlds, that's like 99% of the human population of the Imperium covered. But there are more interesting worlds, and this video hasn't hit the 10-minute mark yet, so let's continue. What is life like on a feudal world? Well, very feudal, to absolutely fucking nobody's surprise. What is interesting about these worlds though, is that the Imperium allows them to remain in the Dark Age, resulting in many feudal worlds not even knowing that they are aligned with the Imperium, or that the Imperium even exists. Like in the Eisenhorn books, they use a feudal world as a secret meeting place, and they make a point of saying that the locals probably think that the lights from their spacecrafts are just signs from God. Life on these worlds is almost identical to what life was for people in our own medieval times. These worlds might have bits and pieces of technology from before the Age of Strife, like knights, but for the most part, it's swords and kings, baby. They do pay their taxes to the Imperium, sometimes unknowingly, as their untouched state makes them ideal for producing food as well as recruits for the Adeptus Astartes. Why does the Imperium allow feudal worlds to remain feudal? Surely that's a waste of good soldiers and resources. Well, the reality is that the Imperium just has other shit to do. If they find a feudal world with people just kinda hanging out and measuring swords, is it worth spending trillions of resources to turn them into a civilized world, or are those resources better spent propping up strategic hive worlds? Also, it would be kinda cute just being able to watch a bunch of naive people herd sheep in the grim darkness of the 42nd millennium. A step below a feudal world is a feral world. Exact same concept, but instead of humanity being in the medieval Renaissance period, they are tribal savages that hunt with club and spear. As such, they can't really pay taxes too well. However, they have been known to produce some fucking decent warriors. Many Astartes chapters recruit exclusively from savage worlds, which is why many such worlds are allowed to continue being savage. Life on a feral world would be completely identical to life on Earth thousands of years ago. Don't get me wrong though, there are incredibly shit places to live as an Imperial citizen. Places that you would struggle to compare to anybody's situation in our current world. I'm talking death worlds, baby. Not to be confused with dead worlds, which are basically just lifeless worlds that can only support small sheltered colonies, mostly used for research purposes. Death worlds are worlds that fucking hate you and they want to kill your ass in the most sadistic ways possible. So basically Australia. They are worlds that generally have breathable atmospheres and are technically inhabitable, but the local flora, fauna, and even weather has evolved to hate your guts. Large, powerful predators capable of disemboweling you with a single strike, malicious carnivorous plants that can dissolve you with acid spray, or just straight up hail the size of basketballs are all examples of what can be expected on a death world. As such, living here is hard. The lifespans are short and the people are hardy. Catachan is the most famous death world as it produces some of the most powerful and reliable guardsmen in the galaxy, the Catachan Jungle Fighters. On a similar vein, the death world of Krieg produces the death core of Krieg, legendary guardsmen with infinite morale. Fenris, the homeworld of the Space Wolves, is a death world due to its extreme weather as well as the fact that fucking krakens and shit live there. What do all these death worlds have in common despite looking and feeling extremely different? That's right, they all produce some of the finest warriors in the galaxy. Hard times create strong men. These worlds are brutal and grimdark. Everyone is constantly working for survival, and even daily chores can be comparable to a battlefield. But as only a sliver of Imperial worlds are death worlds, and an even smaller sliver of Imperial citizens live on these types of worlds, this hardly affects the average quality of life of the Imperium. One world type that is surprisingly shit to live on is an agri-world. At a glance, these seem nice, like living on a farm if the farm was an entire planet, but that's not the case. One agri-world needs to produce enough food to feed multiple nearby planets, sometimes trillions of people. As such, all notions of sustainable clean farming are abandoned, and instead they use extreme fucked up fertilizers and terraforming to get the food they need. Beautiful worlds are stripped to their bones and covered in livestock, genetically modified corn, and a shitload of pollution. Fuck huge tractors rip through fields the size of countries, as the relatively small populations of these worlds work their asses off to keep everything running. The fertilizer can get so dense that in order for you to even admire your own crops, you need to be wearing a radiation suit with an air filter. Now, once again, sure, life sucks here, but the notion that people are working 20-hour days with next to no rest or respite is silly. The human body would break down very quickly, and even if they are kept together by using stims, people would go insane and kill themselves, or destroy the crops out of spite. The only people in the Imperium who work non-stop and are treated like total shit are servitors, but they aren't capable of complaining, so that's totally fine. And for the last main world type, we have Forge Worlds. It's hard to draw comparisons between Forge Worlds and real life due to the hectic sci-fi shit that goes on here. Forge Worlds, for normal people, fucking suck. They are irradiated, polluted, and ugly. There are no holidays or rest, but there is rarely any normal people on them. Forge Worlds are owned and operated by the Adeptus Mechanicus, hence the majority of the labour force are made up of servitors or scutari, with tech priests overseeing the operations. Tech priests don't care about the colour green or breathable air. They also don't care about pina coladas and getting drunk in the rain, hence a smoky shit world that is basically just one big factory is a dream come true for them. But considering the average person on a Forge World is a servitor, the average person on a Forge World fucking hates their life. I want to quickly note here that yes, life on Terra is pretty fucked, but no other world in the Imperium is as densely populated, so consider it as an outlier, not as an example. Same can be said for worlds that the Inquisition destroys or experiments on. Those are very few and far between, and only exist because a few writers had some pretty grim dirt moments. Worlds can be broken down into different subclasses, such as shrine worlds or night worlds. However, the life an Imperial citizen would experience on an industrial world versus shrine world wouldn't be that much different as long as both worlds were classified as civilized worlds. But Majorkill, what about pleasure worlds? Get your mind out of the gutter, Timmy, you smutty man. I've covered pleasure worlds recently, but in short, I'll have to burst your bubble. Pleasure worlds aren't just sex pits of Slaaneshi cults and blood orgies. They are basically just very naturally beautiful worlds that important Imperial citizens can visit and enjoy for holidays. Yes, that does sometimes mean hectic orgies, but just to hear pleasure and assume orgies would be like hearing Australia and automatically assuming large girthy cock size. Maybe that's a bad example. Back to my earlier potential disagreement with ADB. There are a lot of Black Library writers. Whilst they do talk, cross-reference and ensure that their lore stays somewhat consistent across the board, there is no way that every writer would perceive Warhammer 40k in the same way. ADB has an impressive collection of novels and lore he has contributed to the setting, but if you go through his books, the vast majority of them are bang bang skirt skirt my schnibbler. His attention and skills have been dedicated to high octane Space Marine content, whereas Dan Abnett has put together a ton of Inquisitor and Guardsman books that are known for being a lot more down to earth. So the argument could be that ADB, through his immersion in the more epic scale stories, perceives the Imperium as darker than it actually is. Or you know, me and ADB completely agree and I just misinterpreted him like the fuckwit mongoloid I am. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then Patreon is the place to be. We're only $1 per month to give you access to a boatload of hentai, including this new Dark Star piece. Hit the subscribe button, then hit the real subscribe button for more agreeable content. Join the Discord for more memes and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.